Help build protection that has decreased since your last shot and provide better protection against newer variants. Boosters are an important part of protecting yourself from getting seriously ill from COVID-19. To learn more and schedule your appointment, visit ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine. ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
I'm little teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon, Pinigigi, and thank you for your support. Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States.
And 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected.
Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf.
Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy.
As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired.
Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl. Howl!
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Partly cloudy tonight with a low of 10, then sunshine on Tuesday with a high around freezing. For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Cody Cup, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade.
Hey, Boozhoo relatives. This is Ogamaganua from Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here for the first segment. You'll have just me. We'll see and talk to Robert Pilot and Wendy Pilot in the next couple of segments as they do a wonderful interview. But today we're just going to kick it off first thing with the news. So welcome, relatives, and thank you for tuning in to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm Ogamaganua, and my name means Strong Golden Eagle Woman, and I'm a citizen of the Red Lake Nation in northern Minnesota, and that is the topic of my first, albeit vague, but a story nonetheless, Red Lake Action, which is a group of those who are working on the Lake Back issue of 1889, or the Treaty of 1889, rather, made an announcement about 3 days ago stating that the Red Lake Nation Chairman Daryl Secchi and said in the State of the Band of 2023 that the tribe is going to take action to get the rest of our lake back, which is going to be a developing story. So for those of you who don't know, the Red Lake Nation in northern Minnesota is on Red Lake or near Red Lake. And the Red Lake is actually split into an upper and a lower lake. And if you're watching me online, I'm gesturing to my sweatshirt. So there's upper and lower Red Lake. And only half of the lake is technically within the bounds of the Red Lake Nation. And in the original 1889 treaty, the entire lake was promised to the Red Lake Nation. And there's been years and years of talk about taking action to get the rest of the lake back. And it's exciting to hear that there is going to be action on that from the tribal chairman. Lake Back, which is a spinoff of Land Back up in Red Lake, started back in 2011. And this is a really historical announcement to hear the chairman talk about that in the state of the band. So I'm really excited about that as a Red Laker myself, and excited for what that could mean for the future of other tribes who are wanting to take land and water back to care for. So speaking of Land Back, another really great organization that's working on land back in the Twin Cities is the Four Sisters Farmers Market, which is a product of the Native American Community Development Institute, which is a sponsor for this segment today. And they're wondering if anybody would like to reserve a garden bed with the Four Sisters Urban Farm Space. So if you have an interest in growing your own vegetables or fruits in an indigenous community garden and learning more about food sovereignty, reserve a garden bed with the Four Sisters Urban Farm Space. They are going to be on a first come, first served basis, and they do have priorities. Priorities include residents of the East Phillips neighborhood, residents of the East Phillips neighborhood without access to other growing spaces, and food insecure residents of East Phillips. If you would like to find out more, you can go over to NACD, that's NACDI.org/Four Sisters Farm, or click on the Four Sisters Farmers Market link at NACD.org. Really exciting that that is something that is available to the community in the East Phillips neighborhood and beyond. And, we're going to take a minute here to jump all the way across Turtle Island over into California, into Hollywood kind of area, but it's not the same kind of story that you're thinking it might be. I'm not about to talk about reservation dogs, but I'm actually going to be talking about P22, which is a mountain lion that prowled Griffith Park near Hollywood for about the last 10 years. If you're not familiar with P22, P22 was a mountain lion that was named for the study that he was a part of. P stands for Puma, and 22 is the number that he was given. But this cat was really remarkable because it was born in a totally different part of California. And it made, at some point in its life, it made a remarkable 50-mile journey that took him across the 2 Los Angeles major freeways, and managed to evade traffic and human detection in that time. And then he found the wilderness of Griffith Park and set up his own range in that area at only 8 square miles. To science, it's probably the smallest roaming territory of any known mountain lion. Typically, a male cat's territory is 150 square miles. So he was caught on film at Griffith Park about 10 years ago and was fitted with a collar, and they began to track his movements. And anywhere else in the country, of course, he probably would have just been another cat that the scientists were tracking, but he was in Los Angeles, so of course they made him famous. And he was really well loved by the community there. And a lot of people knew about him, but he was so rarely seen. But unfortunately, he was very old. He was about 12 years old, and the difficult decision was made to euthanize him recently. And he received a private tribal burial. So the 4 local tribes in the area led the ceremony to honor this puma as a symbol of the wilderness still present in Southern California. And there was also a small group of officials from the organizations such as the National Park Service and the National Wildlife Federation that also attended his funeral. And he was buried most likely in the same area where he was born and where there's other mountain lions that are still roaming. But to protect P22's remains, the location of the grave will not be disclosed, and the sacred ceremony that was given to him was not open to the public and was not recorded. The tribal elder with the Ferdinandio Tativium and Ventureño Chumash tribe said he was a leader and a chief, and they wanted to be as respectful as possible to such a magnificent animal. Those who were in presence of that said that a red-tailed hawk wheeled overhead and called out several times. And tribal members performed traditional songs and made offerings for the spirit of P22. And, it's a really stark contrast, to what normally happens with these animals. Normally these animals, their bodies are disposed of when they're euthanized. And the organizations that were studying P22 had actually wanted to handle his remains for scientific research. And the tribe stepped in to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Los Angeles County National History Museum to make sure that the mountain lion's remains were not just simply discarded, and he was given a proper burial. And I think that that's something that's really important that we, take a little time to talk about, when we talk about respecting all of our relatives. That is some of the things that we talk about. And one last thing I want to touch on the environmental world is that the Biden administration said today that they're approving the Willow Oil project in Alaska's North Slope, which is a really controversial climate choice from the Biden administration, and has drawn a lot of negative press from environmentalists, myself included. Biden's Willow plan allows 3 sites to be drilled, and ConocoPhillips would have about 219 total wells in that area. And there's a 4th drill site proposed for the project as well. And ConocoPhillips said it's going to relinquish rights to about 68,000 acres of existing leases in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. But many climate activists, including myself, are outraged that Biden is greenlighting the project because it really goes against his plan and campaign promise to stop new oil drilling on public lands. So this is, again, one of those things that we talk about here on Native Roots Radio. If you are looking for more information about it, you can check the hashtag Stop Willow campaigns on social media, and, see if there's some things that you can get involved with to write to the Biden administration there. And we can talk a little bit more about this later in the week. So thanks for tuning in to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. We'll be right back with Robert and Wendy Pilot for some awesome interviews, and stay tuned.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
If the statistics say that 1 in 3 Native women and 1 in 6 Native men have experienced sexual assault in their lifetime, it means our whole community is affected by sexual violence. 1 is too many. Don't stand by, stand up. Don't engage in acts of sexual violence, and shut down the dirty jokes, the gossip, the victim blaming and shaming. As a community, we can change the way we respond. Contact the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition to attend a workshop to learn more.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
J&S Bean Factory is a Native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
Life after military service is different. Many veterans find transitioning difficult, feeling lost and uncertain about the future. These feelings don't take away from a veteran's strength, courage, or sense of duty. If you're a veteran in crisis or know one who is, the power of one person, one connection, one act of compassion can make a difference. For free 24/7 confidential support, call the Veterans Crisis Line at 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or visit veteranscrisisline.net.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot. Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by the Native American Community Clinic on Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis, honoring health and tradition.
Hey, thanks, Wendy. Hey, we have an important election happening in our neighboring state here. We're all over civic media, so it's our relatives in Wisconsin. That's important election coming up, and April 4th is when the election is, but there's early voting in March 21st, and we know, you and I know how much we like that. And we have a very important person here that's running for a Supreme Court judge, and her name is Judge Janet Protasiewicz. And we are so happy to have you, Janet, and thank you. It's election time, and I know it's really important. Your schedule's really important, and you're still working as a judge. So thank you so much for spending time with us here on Native Roots Radio.
Well, I'm delighted and honored to be here, quite frankly. So thank you so much for having me here this morning.
Well, we want to get a little like who you are, and where you're from, and what you're doing, and what got you to this point. Judge Janet. So do you mind just introducing yourself to our listening audience all over Turtle Island?
Sure, I'm happy to. So my name is Janet Protasiewicz. I'm a judge in Milwaukee County. I just wrapped up almost 3 years handling homicide and sexual assault cases, and now I'm doing family court cases. I would say it was about a year ago when I started thinking about this race, probably a little bit more than a year ago, and decided to get into this race because the stakes are so incredibly high, and everything that people care about in the state of Wisconsin is on the line, and everything that people care about in this state is going to be determined by who wins this seat on April 4th. And I have to be very careful when I talk to people. Obviously, I haven't prejudged anything, and whatever comes to our Wisconsin Supreme Court will be judged based on the law. All decisions will be rooted in the law and the Constitution. But I've been very clear with people about what my values are, and what my values are in regard to, a number of issues. First of all, Wisconsin is amongst the most gerrymandered states in the country. And you think about that, and you think about that in conjunction with a person's right to a representative democracy, and their right to having their vote count. And the very gerrymandered maps have affected absolutely everybody in our state and have marginalized people's ability to have their vote count. And I've been very clear that my value is that everybody's vote should count. We have women's rights issues. We have an 1849 abortion ban in the state of Wisconsin. And I think that it is critically important that people understand that my value is that I think a woman should have a right to choose and make those reproductive right decisions herself. So I anticipate that issue will come before our Wisconsin Supreme Court. I can tell you that, in contrast to my opponent, I can tell you with 100% certainty that if he is elected, that 1849 ban will stand. Then we have all sorts of other issues. Wisconsin's a battleground state. And so let's talk about our 2024 presidential election. I would anticipate that the results of the 2024 presidential election will end up in front of our Supreme Court chamber, just as the results of our 2020 election did. And you may know that our election in the state of Wisconsin was really upheld by a 4-3 majority on our Supreme Court. And it's, kind of frightening, quite frankly, to have come that close to
Right.
not having our election votes count in Wisconsin. And, there are conservation issues and, LGBTQ, marriage equality issues. There's just so many issues that likely to come before the Supreme Court makes it a very, very critical race.
Yes, and that makes it really critical that you're on with us today, and we really appreciate it. I was wondering too, so what is your background? Where were you brought up, and what college did you go to? I want to kind of play. I don't know, you're not old enough to remember this, but there used to be a show called "This Is Your Life." So this is your life section here. Where'd you go to college, and what's your background?
So I was born and raised on the south side of Milwaukee to two, very hardworking parents. My mom was a teacher. My stepdad was a teacher. And they both worked really hard, instilled in me, that you're going to work hard, you're going to get a good education, and you're going to give back to your community. We were not raised with a lot of means. We could have a meal on the table, but, we had to work our way through school. And I went to UW Milwaukee, worked my way through school, majored in history. Then I went to Marquette for law school. Excuse me. Marquette was a really wonderful experience. Really taught me that I wanted to stay true to being rooted in my community. And that is exactly what I did. Worked for the district attorney's office for really a quarter of a century before I decided to run for judge. And I've been a judge in Milwaukee since 2014. And I can proudly tell people that the only clients that I have ever had are the people of the state of Wisconsin. And so I've worked very hard to protect families, protect victims, obviously the accused, making sure that their constitutional rights are also upheld, but have worked very, very hard in our community to be fair and impartial and protect people.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have like some native issues here that we'd like to just touch base with you.
You bet.
One of the things I feel like is really important, and I think you do too, is that we talk about here a lot all over Turtle Island, and it's really come to the forefront about missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives. And those are things that aren't taught in school and are just coming up through the media and TikTok and, shows like ours.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about what you know about this and let our audience know.
Well, it's really frightening. And I'll just say this. I was on 2 Indian reservations yesterday. So the timing of your radio show couldn't be better. I was with the Menominee Nation, and then I was with the Oneida Nation, talking to Native people about their thoughts and about their concerns. So, the missing, murdered, and Indigenous women issue, is very, very close to my heart. I believe it's a pandemic. I believe that the movement to prevent it is not often taken seriously enough by investigators and law enforcement. I also know that we have very little data about these cases. And, it's interesting because people I talk to are obviously extraordinarily concerned about the missing, murdered Indigenous women issue. I can tell you that I am certainly, obviously, very concerned about it, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, it's very important. It's really coming to the forefront. And I know we talk a lot, especially with here in Minnesota. And this show started because of I don't want to say the word uprising, but the conflict with Standing Rock and all the misinformation and the Dakotas about the pipelines and things like that. So how important is treaty rights? Because we know and we talk about here on the show a lot that treaties are the supreme law of the land. How important and what is your feeling about the treaties that have been signed over the hundreds of years?
Well, I think that it's pretty obvious to me that the tribes are constantly having to defend their treaties. Obviously, they are considered the law of the land. They are, integral to your standing. It is very clear to me that the tribes have not been treated fairly over the years. I told both groups that I talked with yesterday, I was an American history major, and I took one entire class on manifest destiny. In Milwaukee, at UW Milwaukee, there is a professor, and he's actually from England, and he has dedicated his entire career, quite frankly, to talking about the expansion of the West and manifest destiny and how that impacted the Native people. I have been well aware of these issues, obviously for decades. And I want you to know, and I want your people and listeners to understand that I certainly have a recognition of the issues, and I certainly am a listening ear for all of those issues as well.
I think, Wendy, it's really exciting that we're able to talk to candidates like this and in a sense, vet them out. And we really appreciate this conversation.
Absolutely. It's so important.
We're gonna take a break here in a minute, and I just want to tell everybody we're here with Judge Janet Protasiewicz, and she's running for a very important seat here in Wisconsin, and it's the Supreme Court. And it doesn't get any more important than that. And this discussion is going to keep on going here in the next segment. So you are listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake.
Stay with us.
Boost your immunity and help protect your community. COVID-19 is still here, but it's not too late to get your booster. Staying up to date with vaccines can help build protection that has decreased since your last shot and provide better protection against newer variants. Boosters are an important part of protecting yourself from getting seriously ill from COVID-19. To learn more and schedule your appointment, visit ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine. ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine.
We are your relatives,
We are your relations,
brothers,
sisters,
sons.
daughters.
And some of us are your grandchildren.
We are your community. Historically, we held places of honor and respect. Because of the impact of colonization, some of us are rejected, thrown out from family, friends, and community, set up as targets for sexual violence, sex trafficked, humiliated, tortured, and murdered. Everybody has the right to be safe. We are your relatives. Remember,
Homophobia is not traditional.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
We are back, and we are looking at a pretty lopsided matchup, Jim.
That's right, Ron. I mean, in one corner, we've got a 175-pound guy, and in the other, a 6,000-ton heavyweight train.
Jim, this guy has no idea what he's getting himself into.
It's no contest. Every day, people tempt fate and die trespassing on railroad tracks. See tracks? Think train.
Hello, Minneapolis. Make sense, make progress, make a date, make an appointment with me. Weeknights from 10 to midnight here on AM 950.
Nightingale is your cozy, comfortable neighborhood restaurant in the Whittier neighborhood at 26th and Lindale. Nightingale has patio, dining room, and bar seating available. Plus, they still have takeout and delivery. Their menu has lots of delicious options like the famous Nightingale burger and fries, ginger tamari chicken wings, smoked chicken liver pate, and more. They're open from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. daily with their full menu until midnight. So make the friendly neighborhood Nightingale your go-to restaurant in South Minneapolis. Place an order, make a reservation, and more at nightingalempls.com.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. We have families waiting for a car. Over 85% of unemployed are successful in finding and keeping a job if they have dependable transportation. A car plus a job equals a life changed. 612-919-5526. We have families waiting for a car. 919-5526 or autotech.org.
Do you have a car you no longer need but don't want to jump through all the hoops to sell yourself? Rudy Luther Toyota can help with their We Buy program. It's really simple. Go to rudyluthertoyota.com, click on the We Buy link, type in some basic information, and Rudy Luther will get you an instant and accurate offer. Then set an appointment, and after a quick verification of the vehicle, Rudy Luther will set you up with your payment with a check on the spot in most cases. We Buy, it's that simple. For more details or to sell your vehicle, head to rudyluthertoyota.com. That's rudyluthertoyota.com.
Think your company's safe? Your staff is working from home, right? As I speak, cyber criminals are mounting attacks across the country. Remember, when we're weakest, cyber criminals attack. Hi, Mark Sommerfeld from Rymark. The Rymark team is guiding our clients through these difficult times. In fact, demand has been so high, we created an easy-to-follow guide. It's yours free. Download our 5 steps to securely work from home now at rymarkit.com or call 651-328-8900 for a no-cost how-to discussion.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Partly cloudy tonight with a low of 10, then sunshine on Tuesday with a high around freezing. The Electric Fetus is having a pre-inventory store-wide sale now through Sunday. Take 20% off almost everything in the store. The Electric Fetus is located at 2000 South 4th Avenue in Minneapolis. More information at electricfetus.com.
This is Leonard Peltier. I am in Coleman 1. U.S. Penitentiary, and I'm listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by MN350, a grassroots organization fighting for climate justice.
Hey, Wendy, this is a really important show. Not that they all aren't, but this is super important, and we're working on how well we did in school and how we can figure out how the Supreme Court fits into our daily life.
Government is very, very complicated.
Right, exactly. Hey, we're here with candidate Judge Janet Protasiewicz, and she is running for the Supreme Court Justice in Wisconsin. And welcome back. And let's just talk about a little bit about how important this election is, Janet. And again, thanks for staying with us.
Oh, thank you so much. So this election is going to really determine the makeup of our Supreme Court. So by a little way of background, there are 7 seats on our Wisconsin Supreme Court. Right now, 3 of those seats are held by people who uphold the law and follow the law and uphold the Constitution. Those are Justices Ann Walsh Bradley and Karofsky and Dallett. And then we have extremists on the other side. I would say that we have the opportunity of a lifetime because one of those 4 seats is opening up, and that's what this election is all about. It's giving us an incredible, incredible opportunity to shift the balance on the court to 4 justices who are going to do just that, bring change to our Supreme Court, bring common sense to our Supreme Court, get away from the extreme partisanship, and, people are going to be able to feel like they go into court with an independent Supreme Court and there's not a thumb on the scale against them. So I think that is, critically important, and the stakes couldn't be higher. So, we've got some of the issues that we've talked about, but then you put those issues in conjunction with the opportunity to shift the balance of power on our court. And the race is so critically important. I can't even overstate how important it is. And I suspect that is why we are getting so much attention from across the country about this race.
Yeah, it is. And, our democracy and, the people, the things that you brought up in the first segment, just about the rights that are slowly being eroded that have been around, for us for hundreds, or not hundreds, but 50 years, like Roe versus Wade. The percentage of the people in this country are upset and came out and voted. So we always talk about this is the most important election, but they all are, and we got to stop talking that way. They're all important, right, Wen?
Yeah, and it's important for regular citizens like you and I, Robert, to get involved in politics. I always say it, get to know your city council member, your House representative, and the senator in your area that represents you, and get involved in important issues.
Well, we have an election coming up April 4th, and you can start in person. Early voting begins April 20 or March 21st, and this is a very important election. So, Judge Janet, can you help us? Um, Tell us what the pecking order or the line of order that the Supreme Court comes into play for maybe a normal or regular citizen or a lawsuit, or how does that work? And it's been a long time since I've been in high school.
Okay, so here's generally how it works. I'm a judge in the circuit court right now. So every case that's filed in Milwaukee County, and we have 47 branches, is heard by one of the judges in Milwaukee County. So a case comes in front of me, say a homicide case comes in front of me, and I handle the case from beginning to end. At the end of that case, a party can appeal it, and they would appeal it to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals in Wisconsin takes every single case that is appealed. They have to. That's their job. They're really an error correcting court. And what they do is they say, oh, she got it right, or she got it wrong, or she got part of it right, or she got part of it wrong. We're going to affirm it. We're going to reverse it, or we're going to send it back and say, go fix it, right? That's what the Court of Appeals does. They're an error correcting court. Then our highest court of the land is our Wisconsin Supreme Court. And what happens at our Supreme Court are, disputes are brought, but they are not all accepted by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court selects the cases that they believe will have the most impact on the people of the state of Wisconsin, combined with the fact as to whether or not it's really a, new, novel, cutting-edge legal issue. And then the state Supreme Court would hear that case based on, there'd be briefing, there'd be oral arguments, and then the court would render a decision. So it's very different from the circuit court, which handles every single case and all decisions are based on the law, to the next level, which is the Court of Appeals, which is the error correcting court, to our state Supreme Court, which really develops the common law for this state.
Wow. That was good. Do you have any
Yes,
questions?
you know what? I learned something every time we talk when we talk about the law and the government and the branches and how a bill is passed and a whole bunch of stuff. So it's great.
One thing, Judge Janet, I just want to give a shout out to our Gen Zs, because this last election cycle, they outnumbered Wendy and I, our boomers, and they outnumbered us for the first time ever. And they're seeing what's going on. They don't have the same perspective as a lot of people do. They're really they're first generation that's not going to live as long. It's going to be harder to get a house. There are all these things. So it's great to see, but we also want to talk about how important every election is, and that, if we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, we outnumber them. We just have to stay engaged and know how important these elections are.
100%. And, you hear so much from, people who are campaigning and talking about races, that their race is the most important race. And so, you hear that. And I think people get tired of hearing that, and they don't necessarily know when the stakes are as high as they are. This race, I can tell you, is that most important race. It's going to shape what happens in the state of Wisconsin for many, many years to come. And those concerns and issues that we talked about are going to be coming before this Supreme Court. A woman's right to choose, our presidential election results, maybe a fresh look at the gerrymandering and the maps, conservation issues, marriage equality issues, so many issues that I would anticipate will come before this court. And so this is the big one. This is critical.
Right. When you talk about gerrymandering, I think in the last, the year ago when this last election cycle was happening here nationally, they talked about something like Republicans only have to come out and be 40% of the vote, and then but the Democrats to switch anything almost have to be 60% of the vote. Do you kind of know what I'm talking about there? Because I'm bringing in some numbers that I'm not 100% sure on, but there's something like that we have to vote more in order to change things, meaning the Democrats.
Well, the Democrats have certainly some roadblocks built against them, and here's why. Wisconsin's a battleground state. No matter how you look at it, no matter what you think, no matter what side you're on, we're a battleground state. We have very, very close statewide elections. So given the fact that we have very close statewide elections, you'd kind of think the makeup of our state legislature would be about 50-50, right? You'd kind of think that the makeup of the number of people that we send to the House of Representatives would be 50-50. You'd kind of think that. But instead, you look at the 8 members of the House of Representatives that we have. 2 are blue, 6 are red. You look at our state assembly and our state senate, and about 65% are red, 35% are blue. And you say, to any rational person, how can that be fair, right? How can that possibly be fair when we have such a battleground state? Shouldn't it be closer to 50-50? And then when things are closer to 50-50, you have the ability for people to, get a little closer to the middle and work together and be less extreme. So, I think that the gerrymandering has, numerous issues attendant to it.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, we're here with Judge Janet Protasiewicz, and she's running for the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. Judge Janet, can you give our audience how we can support you, a website, a Facebook, how we can donate to your cause and basically our cause?
Take a look at janetforjustice.com. The website's janetforjustice.com. Talks about ways people can get involved and ways people can volunteer, lets you add your name to the endorsement list. There's so many things that people can do. And what I've been telling people, for me, the most critical thing is to get that vote out on April 4th. We cannot pick our foot off the pedal. We have to run right through that finish line. The most critical thing that we can do is make sure that we're getting that vote out. And that is what is so important. So, the early voting on March 21st, the absentee voting, any way that people can get themselves and their friends to the polls is the way that we are going to, come to victory on April 4th and bring Wisconsin back to the great progressive state that it once was.
Yes, it was. It definitely was. I lived in Madison for a short time, and we love Madison, don't we, Wendy?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Love it.
And, just to remind everyone too, that you can bring your tribal ID and also ID or a proof of residence. And so we got about a minute left, Judge Janet. Let's hear your best stump speech. That was hard for me to say. Stump speech.
My best stump speech is every single thing that you care about is on the line with this race. Every single thing, and like we've talked about before, everything about saving our democracy is on the line. And we have the opportunity to do just that. If we get out to the polls, we have the opportunity to do just that because we can shift the balance on our Supreme Court from a 4-3 majority of extreme partisans to a 4-3 majority of people who are going to follow the law and uphold our Constitution.
Wow. Well said. Perfect. This has been an amazing interview, Wendy. Thank you, Judge Janet Protasiewicz. You don't know how hard I've been working on your name over the last few days.
You did great.
Thank you. Hey, wow, great. We're going to put this on the best of too, Wendy. This has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy, but it's very important for us to hear the truth and speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. It was delightful.
We'll be right back.
Boost your immunity and help protect your community. COVID-19 is still here,
but it's not too late to get your booster. Staying up to date with vaccines can help build protection that has decreased since your last shot and provide better protection against newer variants. Boosters are an important part of protecting yourself from getting seriously ill from COVID-19. To learn more and schedule your appointment, visit ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine. ramseycounty.us/COVID vaccine.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
While I'm pregnant, I can keep our baby safe by not drinking, smoking, or using drugs. But how are we going to keep her safe after she's born?
When I grow up, I look forward to dancing in powwows, going to college, and being successful. But I don't want to be one out of 3 American Indian women to be raped or sexually assaulted in her lifetime.
As relatives and friends of Native women, it is our responsibility to stand up and speak out for every woman's right to be safe in her home and the community.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States.
And 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected.
Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf.
Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy.
As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired.
Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot. Hey, welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is supported by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
Oh! Well, that was a lively howl,
Yeah,
Wendy.
I
Good.
know.
Hey, I want to introduce my awesome and beautiful wife, Wendy. Wendy has been an animal advocate for many years, and we discuss here in the last almost 7 years on Native Roots Radio our sacred animals segment, which are our relatives in a native way. So always appreciate it, always learning. Thank you, Wendy, and welcome.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Hanaji Hihani, and that means cares for them. I was given that name by my Dega Curtis. Curtis goes by Mashke Hanajinga, which means walks on white clouds. I'm a humane policy volunteer leader for the Humane Society of the United States, and I work on animal issues at the local and state level, and it's always my pleasure to do that. So I love talking about our sacred animals, and I have been seeing so many articles. I'm reading articles, and I have Facebook pop-ups here on this wildlife cams. Robert, you know, the cams that are set up all over the wild, and we get to see these beautiful wild animals in their natural habitat,
right?
You doing their normal everyday
house cleaning,
feeding, everything. And I love these cams because they don't really disturb the way these animals are living.
Yeah.
So I've been watching one of the cams. It's the Big Bear Lake cam, Friends of the Big Bear, and the Big Bear Lake is in San Bernardino.
Ooh.
Or Bernardino.
No, that was good.
County, California. And what this cam is watching is 2 eagles. So these 2 eagles named Jackie and Shadow. And as I talked about before on the show, eagles mate for life. So these 2 have been together for quite some time.
Yeah.
Yes. And over the years, they have had laid many eggs and have hatched many eaglets. But unfortunately, sometimes the eggs just don't hatch for whatever reason. You know, nobody really knows exactly what it is. It could be that was really bad weather, or that, the eggs were left without warmth for a little while. It could be a whole bunch of different things.
Right.
So if you'd like to go on the Friends of Big Bear lake and watch the cam. It's really unbelievable. But there's people watching these two eagles, Jackie and Shadow, and it's kind of a sad story that this year they had eggs and they were in the nest, and Jackie and Shadow were taking turns taking care of the eggs and incubating them and sitting on them, and while the other one goes hunting and this and that. And this is seen in the wild all the time with eagles, that they share the parental responsibilities, which is really awesome. But 2 days ago, the cam showed that they both had left the nest. Jackie and Shadow had left the nest.
Oh.
Yeah, because I think Jackie, who's the female, realized that the eggs were not going to hatch. I guess she could figure out, like by sitting them, if there's any movement inside them, and she knew that they were not going to hatch. So they both left the nest, and the reason why she left the nest is so that other birds could come. Ravens came and ate the eggs and cleaned out the nest. But what happened was Shadow really, they said, like, he wasn't really didn't really know or understand what was happening. So when Shadow went back to the nest and didn't see the eggs, he was really astonished, and you could kind of see his reaction on the cam, that he is very surprised, and he is like looking for these eggs that were there, every day. And what they did was they saw him every day come to the nest, and he would clean the nest, and he would adjust the sticks around the nest and fix everything nice. And he would spend hours doing that every day while he took care of these eggs. But when he came back and did not see the eggs, again, he was very surprised, and you could see him looking around and, seemingly very surprised, like, what the heck, what happened to the eggs? And he didn't clean the nest at all. He didn't do his, usual stick ritual. And then it says here that the people who were watching these eagles and really keeping an eye on them noticed that Jackie was over in a tree, and Shadow flew over to the tree, but didn't sit next to Jackie. He sat, in another branch, but then she came over to him, and it looked like, she was comforting him because he seemed very upset about it. And that it seemed to them that Jackie was able to, process the loss of her eggs, and that, she was able to accept it, where Shadow, the male, really took it very, very hard. But the good news is, Robert, is that there was just somebody just saw them just the other day mate again.
Wow.
So they're not really sure whether it's time, the timing is right, and whether they could have fertilized eggs and hatch in time, before all the snow and everything leaves. But we're going to keep our fingers crossed and see. But there's always next season.
Right.
And again, these animals, they mate for life, and they have feelings, and they have emotions, and they, visibly show their emotions, so Shadow is visibly shaken by this.
Wow.
Yeah. There's an article also in the Sacramento Bee, and that is dated March 9th. It's written by Helena Wagner, and you could read about that. Or you could go again to this Big Bear Lake Friends and watch the cam. It's really beautiful. I mean, this nest, the size of this nest is just unbelievable. It's really high up in this tree, and it overlooks the Big Bear Lake, which is just beautiful. I mean, the scenery is just beautiful. But it got me thinking, these animals, and we've witnessed it, Robert, over the years. Even our dogs that we have, just recently, we have one dog, Gracie, who's been pretty sick.
Yeah.
She's on medication, and she's doing okay. But we could notice that Wanda, our other dog, is upset about it. And I even called the vet about it, because Wanda has been shaking or like quivering every now and then. You would just see her quivering. And I was worried that she might be in pain because she tore her ACL, right? She tore her ACL. So the vet said she wasn't in any pain, and she is on light pain medications for her arthritis. But in any case, I called the vet and I just said, I think Wanda might be in pain. So he went through all these things. If you lift her leg, does she do this? Do you lift her head? Does she do this? No, she's not in any pain. We realized that. And then he said, is there anything stressful going on in the house? And I said, well, you know what? I'm glad you asked me that, because I think that she's upset about Gracie. And he said to me, you know what? That happens all the time where pets have a housemate that they really care about, and they can sense when something is wrong. And he said she might just be upset about Gracie.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that something? Like these little beings, like you call them little beings?
Well, I know, Gracie used to sit with our cats that were sick and comfort them, and she sensed that too. So that's crazy.
That's right.
That it's reversed, and when we got those 3, 2 of them we had to get together because we got these.
They're a bonded pair,
right?
Yeah,
and
they're
it
bonded.
was we did not know that until we witnessed it, that how much they both loved hanging out with each other, and Wanda would teach Gracie what's going on. But hey, Wendy, thank you so much again for our sacred animals, our relatives, our family. Really appreciate talking about it. You've been listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. We're still here. We are the 7th generation.
Free Leonard Peltier.
Now.
It's an absolute must for any true foodie. Vinaigrette at 50th and Xerxes in South Minneapolis offers premium oils and vinegars for the most discriminating of tastes. This is Sarah Piepenberg, owner of Vinaigrette. We buy